CGTN headquarters in Beijing. This is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing.
Recently, DeepSeek has been making headlines across the world. This AI model highlights China's growing competitiveness in the global AI race, as it is considered to outperform other popular models at much lower costs. Many see it as a potential new path towards achieving AGI, or artificial general intelligence. But is DeepSeek really as powerful as perceived? How does it shift the balance in the tech competition between China and the United States? And how can we ensure that AI technology benefits more people worldwide?
Today, we're very happy to be joined by a group of panelists. Now, joining us from London is Angela Lee, chair of the London School of Economics China Development Forum. From Berlin, Germany, we have Thorsten Jelinek, European Director and Senior Fellow at the Taihe Institute. And from Tokyo, Japan, we have Andy Mok, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And from Beijing, Professor Gai Keke at the School of Cyberspace Science and Technology at Beijing Institute of Technology. Andy Mok, let me turn to you. You have been following the development of Chinese tech sectors. In what ways do you think DeepSeek distinguishes itself from other models and other algorithms and apps in the market around the world?
Well, Wang Guan, I think that what DeepSeek has accomplished is a very important milestone from several perspectives. So as we just heard, from the perspective of the artificial intelligence industry, it was able to deliver comparable results at a fraction of the cost. So what this means is that this actually challenges the most fundamental understanding of how the AI industry works. So many around the world, especially the technology leaders in the United States, have long believed that the way you improve AI, and in particular, the way you achieve artificial general intelligence, is by spending more money on more and more advanced chips, largely from NVIDIA. And what DeepSeek has shown is not only can you do it with much less money, but you can focus on using software algorithms in a very clever way. So that's the first point. Second point, this challenges the American understanding of how generally economic and technological success works, in that it's long been an article of faith that breakthrough innovation only happens with quote-unquote free markets, quote-unquote democracies. And DeepSeek, of course, as a Chinese company, has really shattered these preconceptions. And finally, I think what DeepSeek has done is that it has challenged the prevailing economic model globally, in that it not only has achieved comparable performance to OpenAI's ChatGPT, but it has made it open source. And what this means is that anyone, anywhere around the world, can modify the code, improve it. So this has profound ramifications for the future speed of development. But it also is likely to empower those in the global south for whom cost is a very real barrier. And I think what this also shows is that DeepSeek is an example of China's vision to provide key global public goods.
Angela, let me turn to you in London. I heard that you're an avid user of generative AI apps. Tell us about your experience using DeepSeek. What is it like? How do you like it?
My peers and I have been testing DeepSeek extensively, and a very fascinating story. So one day I was in class, and a European friend of mine actually came up to me and said, this whole thing about DeepSeek, I'm like, yes, I know that it made NVIDIA stocks drop by a bunch. What about it? They're like, well, I suggest you to use it. It's better than ChatGPT. And since then, I've been using it quite extensively. And, the real surprise is that it's known to be having a higher, more analytical power, and to put it in simple terms, a higher IQ and EQ compared to ChatGPT. And we ask questions about, do you have consciousness, and do you have, those to what extent, and very philosophical questions that requires a lot of rigorous analytical thought. that the humility and the rigor that comes from DeepSeek, it's truly impressive. And I'm an avid user, of course, but then my peers who are from the Americas, from Europe, from the global South, and even my teachers, professors, I think have been loving it. So I think we really want to embrace DeepSeek, and the paralleled comparative advantage of DeepSeek compared to ChatGPT, I think it's pretty profound. I think for practical and everyday use, I think our first go-to tool would be DeepSeek from now on.
Thorsten, let me turn to you in Berlin, Germany, because people have been comparing Chat versus DeepSeek. How would you look at the comparative advantages of DeepSeek? I mean, apparently it is an indigenous Chinese application with different algorithms, open source features that Chat doesn't necessarily have. As a European scholar, how do you look at it?
I think it is a Sputnik moment, right? And of course, there are open source models. You have Llama from Meta or Facebook, and you have others, Mistral, the French source open source approach. But firstly, they don't reach the model capacity of OpenAI, which is a closed proprietary model. And with DeepSeek being open and reaching that performance makes it really a true remarkable moment, I think, in this AI history now, and I think it will be remembered for that. If you also compare on the open source approach, those open source approaches you see with Meta, for example, they are not as open as the approach offered by DeepSeek for the R1 model and for the V3 model, these two different models. And so basically, any user can use it freely and also commercially. So there's basically no strings attached to that model. And, we are running a startup here. And the first thing we did, we downloaded the version and we linked it up with a agentic system where you can create agents and it works immediately. So it's fantastic experience. Of course, I think we will have more discussions. There are lots of shades of gray, nevertheless, in terms of performance, costs, etc.
Professor Guy, I really want to ask you about some technical specifics. For people watching this program, they have been talking about how different the algorithms are, of course, right? They've been talking about this distillation technology. Can you explain to our viewers in simple terms what exactly is distillation technology that is considered core, of the algorithms that DeepSeek boasts?
Well, I think one of the key features, the key difference between these two large models is that ChatGPT, as far as we know, it uses like transformer architecture, but this one, the DeepSeek, actually uses another architecture, which is called like a mixture of experts. That means they use like a more attention-based methods. In this case, actually, DeepSeek has a better performance in reasoning because of this new architecture. I think the key thing is that the DeepSeek actually tried a brand new method, which is totally different from what OpenAI actually explored in the past. Definitely, I think there are a lot of discussion on the website, but obviously, DeepSeek has provide us with a new idea for the development of AI.
Andy, how do you look at all these, talk about the algorithm being different and exciting, distillation technology, and potentially achieving, reaching the scaling law, meaning more data, high quality data being observed and obtained, driving us even closer to an artificial general intelligence, Andy?
Sure. Guan, so my understanding is one of the biggest costs of training a large language model is the processing time that you have to run on these, again, very expensive GPUs typically made by NVIDIA. So what DeepSeek has done is very clever engineering is probably the best way to describe it. So I'll use just a very quick example. So the standard for training a large language model is to use 32 bits, or you can think of it as 32 numbers, which takes up a reasonable amount of space. And when you multiply this by millions, billions, maybe trillions of calculations This takes quite a lot of computing power and computing time. So one of the things DeepSeek did was they said, look, what if we could achieve roughly the same results only using 8 bits? And that's one of the things they did that sort of amazed the technical world. The other point I think it's important to mention too, Wang, is the team that built DeepSeek is entirely educated in China. So again, this challenges, I think, another article of faith, right? That you need to have Western educated technical people to make big breakthroughs. And this shows that this is not the case. So what this means then is that, we can do much more with existing hardware and maybe lower capacity chips, reaching artificial general intelligence, meaning machines that are as smart, if not much smarter than humans, maybe much more within reach, and maybe that the first AGI will be a native Chinese speaker.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope. That would be beautiful. The sound of Chinese being heard on that very platform. Thanks for that. Angela, let me turn to you. China did all this against the odds, obviously. There has been this U.S. Tech restrictions, sanctions against Chinese technologies, the ban of exporting chips to China. How do you feel about that? China achieving all this against the, under the sanctions and the restrictions of the United States, Angela?
Well, thank you, Guan. And I actually want to build on a point that Andy mentioned earlier, which is, a lot of these discoveries are making the West, especially mainstream media in the West, a big surprise in terms of, how can we overcome these mainstream perceptions that a non-Western educated team could do something like this. And actually, to add on to this, I think it reveals about the great potential of Chinese private entrepreneurs, which challenges, the Eurocentric perception of the monolithic state, that in a country, like China, there's a lot of state intervention, etc., that we can't achieve something as great as ChatGPT. And now DeepSeek is here. One, it reveals that Chinese educated, mainland grown, a team of millennials can do something as great as this, but also the power and the capacity of the Chinese private entrepreneurial sector. So that's one thing I felt about it. And second of all, I think across Europe, especially in the UK, people are having a more pragmatic stance towards it. It's less polarized, less hawkish, and less zero-sum mentality. For example, Keir Starmer, he recently unveiled a plan to use AI to boost productivity. And there's all this talks about, the centuries-old Jevons paradox of, how we can achieve or use AI to boost consumption. I think all these very pragmatic talks are definitely helping the narrative. And I think it's very imperative that we kind of ditch that monopoly of innovation, hegemonic narrative that the U.S. is trying to prevail. But then also another observation is that people have been talking about, ChatGPT is blaming that DeepSeek, you're stealing American technology and using it as a lever. But then in science, we say this as standing on the shoulders of the giants. So I think it's a very naturalized process. And I think people across many sectors who are pragmatists and who are actually viewing this from a relatively objective lens are seeing this as, just a very naturalized process of a technological leadership shift. So yeah.
Thurston, let me turn to you. How about the European scholars and also the policy circles? How are they looking at DeepSeek? Apparently they're looking at DeepSeek with much less suspicion than the U.S. Congress, the Beltway policymakers surrounding the Trump administration. But give us a sense of the European policy circles. What are they going to do vis-a-vis DeepSeek going forward?
Cynically put, we look with less, or Europe looks less suspicion because we don't have any open AI here, right? So that's not a competition in that. And on the contrary, when you look first at the business, the CEO of SAP, the big the big software company from Germany, he saw it, Klein, his name, he saw it actually as an opportunity. On the one hand, I think it's legitimate. I think there are concerns, safety and security concerns about this strong digitalization and AI advancement. And I think you also have regulations in China and the United States. But you can see that EU has a particular regulatory focus on that, right? And I think the industry is not really fond of it. I think some argue that some regulation even elicits some innovation, which might be true because you need to live with this regulation. So we become also very innovative. But obviously, we don't have a DeepSeek now, which emerged in Europe. So, and then instead you have Italy, Ireland, Belgium, France, were the first countries which were immediately suspicious and investigating. There are legitimate concern, but I think this kind of risk-based approach or regulatory approach is less one of having just these concerns and having a fair competition, but more of protectionism, what we see.
Yeah.
And I think that's the unfortunate case here in the EU.
Thurston, you brought up the concept of the Sputnik moment. That is, of course, well studied. That was a moment in 1957, if I remember correctly, when Dwight Eisenhower, then President of the United States, was sufficiently alarmed by the Soviet Union, who put a manned spacecraft into the orbit. And then we know what followed. There was this intense arms race between the Soviet Union and the United States. A lot of resources were spent in that regard. So let me turn to you, Andy. Do you foresee another Sputnik moment, given the fact that Trump has been talking about containing DeepSeek? The U.S. Congress has been talking about getting alarmed by the DeepSeek. What's going to happen next?
Well, I think we certainly are witnessing a Sputnik-like moment here at Wang Guan. And the optimistic view of this is something that the founders of Hewlett-Packard, which was once one of the technology leaders in Silicon Valley, said that competition brings out the best in products. So, and I think we already are seeing this in that since DeepSeek dropped or made its announcement, that OpenAI has accelerated the pace of its release of models. I think this is causing a rethink about what every serious player in the space has to do to be competitive. So here it's important to point out it's not just DeepSeek with its extremely low cost of training its model, but the other big cost is the operating of the model, which customers pay. And this is usually measured in how much dollars per million tokens. And we can think of a token as a word. And a number of Chinese companies, not just DeepSeek, offer their models at a fraction of the cost. I think for OpenAI, it's like $60 per million tokens. And what this means is that it's making everybody more innovative and more competitive. So this is the positive view of this Sputnik-like moment. Now, of course, the downside and the danger is we're already seeing the U.S. resorting to its familiar, if somewhat ineffective, playbook of saying this is a national security risk. So they've labeled Huawei a national security risk, other Chinese companies. And the track record has shown that this is all largely backfired in that Huawei has thrived despite the attacks by the U.S. China's EV industry has achieved global leadership technologically, cost-wise, even design-wise. So I think this is a Sputnik-like moment. My hope, though, is that this will accelerate innovation and competition around the world.
Let me jump in real quick. Given what happened to TikTok, given what happened to ZTE and Huawei back in the day, aka US sanctions against them, what is the most likely fate of DeepSeek?
Yeah, I think we have to see one. So let's look at TikTok, for example. So President Trump was a vehement critic of TikTok, calling it a grave national security threat 2 or 3 years ago. Fast forward to today, where he says he has a warm spot in his heart for TikTok. And I think the key here is, can companies like ByteDance, like High Flyer, which is the company that launched the DeepSeek model, can they find a way to deliver decisive political value to powerful leaders in the US like Trump. And I want to point out, too, even someone like Chuck Schumer, a Democrat in the Senate, has also largely pivoted in his negative views towards TikTok. So again, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I do hold out hope that a way can be found where these companies can still thrive all around the world, but especially in the United States.
Yeah, hopefully people can learn from history. Thanks for that. And I want to thank everyone for their insights. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour. Now, with global competition in science and technology intensifying, how is China positioning itself at the forefront of innovation? Our reporter Wang Naiqian recently went to UB Tech, a leading humanoid robots and smart service robots company, and talked with Michael Tam, Chief Brand Officer of UB Tech Robotics.
悟空，悟空，你在吗？
我在你的心中。
So can you imagine a world where what we once saw in the science fiction films is becoming reality? The humanoid robots, once a fantasy, is now stepping out of screen and into our lives.
They could be a tour guide in the showroom, a quality inspector in the factory, or even a companion at home. In China, humanoid robots are gradually being used in diverse scenarios, paving the way for their integration into our daily lives. Data shows that China's humanoid robot market is expected to reach about 870 billion yuan by the year 2030, becoming a new hotspot for the future.
Mr. Tam, it's our great pleasure to have you here with us. This year, humanoid robots has been made headlines in China, from performing the Yankou dance at the Spring Festival Gala to working on the production lines in automobile industries. Do you think 2025 will be the year humanoid robot truly take off and experience explosive growth?
In the last 2 years, actually, is a boosting years for human robots. There are hundreds of the newborn companies in the human robots areas. So not this year, actually those last 2 years, with the coming breakthrough of the AI, especially the LLM breakthroughs in the AI industry, actually push the human robots into the next level. We can imagine there's more breakthrough in 2025. That could help to set up a very strong pushing power to make a human robot coming into the mass production areas. You see, UB Tech already applying our human robots in the EV, production manufacturing already in 2024. So we are already have so many scenarios in the manufacturing areas with human robot together. We are doing the POC, the proof of the concept for human robot entering into the manufacturing. In a years of the POC, the proof of concept for introducing those manufacturing new productive forces into the EV car manufacturing. We already have the first stage developments of whole years of manufacturing with human robots.
Okay, I understand. So, but we know that this industry is still in a very early stage of commercialization, but it has like huge potentials, but also fierce competition. So how do you see China's position in this competitive arena?
We own so many advantages here in Chinese market. First, we have the full range of the industry catalyzations. So that helps us not only from the help of the production lines, the supply chain support, to a very innovative technology like the AI and like the human robot design, like the sensor, like that. So the population of the scientists like the workers here, have so many experience to support the robot productions. This is the most edge advantage for Chinese company to develop robots. Another advantage for here is we own a very huge market. So many scenarios already with a very high development of the digitalizations. So the human robot going into different scenarios to have the POC to applying the human robots could have the advantage of the digitalizations. We can use the data to train the human robots. So those are different from train the robot with the website data. So we can go into the real working areas, real working scenario like the manufacturing factories, like the EV cars. We can engage the human robot with the digitalization of the development of those very high-end production factories.
So we know that the development of one industry requires the collaboration between both upstream and also downstream partners. So how will UBTech continue to work with its partners to advance technology and to build the ecosystem?
As a very innovative and new developed industries for human robots, we seek two stage or two ways to incorporate of both the production industries and also the R&D side. So while we are here in China, so we also set up a platform with Xiaomi together here with Embodied AI Association here in Beijing. So that incorporates all the stakeholders and partners together, like the universities, the labs together, and also the productions industry together.